and welcome to the 2026 election update. The countdown to August 13, 2026 is truly on. And at this point, there's a lot of information that needs to get out to masses, members of the public, on so many issues. And so on the update, we'll be bringing you responses or solutions to some of the questions that as members of the public you might have. So on this particular edition, we are hosting the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Brown Kasaro from the Electoral Commission of Zambia. And we'll talk about a number of issues, of course, that may be in public domain that people are talking about. Mr. Kasaro, I would like to welcome you to the 2026 election update.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on the update program for ZANIS, and grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak to the viewers out there and the nation at large in terms of where we're at in the electoral process as we prepare for August 13th, 2026.
You're a very busy person, so when we have you on set like this, we really appreciate that gesture. Your schedule is very tight, so we don't take that lightly. Thank you so much once again.
Yeah, but also to comment from our end, yes, we are busy, but this is also critical because our work, the voters out there, and indeed the citizens must be kept informed. So we take it seriously that we appear at forums like this to share information so that we can carry everyone along as we prepare for the 13th August elections.
Thank you so much. Let's begin talking from this premise of the campaign schedule. When you announced it initially, there was this outcry that it was too abrupt, and then you called a meeting to which several stakeholders, should we say political parties, actually came, and you held a meeting. What really prompted you to call that meeting, and what issues were discussed in that meeting?
So the starting point is that viewers out there must appreciate that the electoral process is dynamic. There are things that come up as we execute on the process, and the Commission would from time to time react for purposes of ensuring that at the end of the day, the election is as credible as possible. So the background to election timetables is that for some time now, and usually during by-elections, immediately after nominations, the Commission has come up with an administrative arrangement where, for example, for by-elections, a particular constituency or indeed ward would be segmented, and then the candidates contesting that particular election would agree which part of the ward or the constituency they will be campaigning for a particular time. So usually by election, the campaign period would be a month. So that's all right, week one will be in the eastern side, week two will be in the southern, then western, and then northern. And the other candidate, then they rotate like that. So the idea behind this is that you would want to avoid two candidates convening at the same point to hold a public meeting for purposes of campaigning. So they agree in advance to say, all right, let's segment this ward or constituency so that we can campaign peacefully and avoid any clashes, as it were. So for purposes of the 2026 general election, what happened was, you recall that the nominations were held between 18th May and 22nd May 2026. At the close of nominations, the following day, all the districts in the country, our officers held meetings in other constituencies with the candidates that had successfully filed to develop campaign timetables for their respective constituencies. And these were successfully held. And at that point, the understanding then was that that particular campaign timetable would not only take care of the parliamentary campaigns, but also the local government, which comprise the mayor, council chairperson, or indeed the councillors in the particular constituency. So that began to be implemented. Now, the other guideline that was issued was that the presidential campaigns, which are national, would, as they go on the ground, follow the timetables for the particular district. Now, as we began to implement that, issues began to arise that, look, when a presidential candidate, you and I agree, when a presidential candidate goes to, especially the smaller district, okay, if a presidential candidate goes to a district like in Kayama, you find that them being in that district, the whole district is sort of like, they get the attention rather on average of all the entire district. So therefore the management of the local campaign timetable began to be challenging whenever a presidential candidate got to a particular district. So it is for that reason that the commission issued that notice to say, look, let's suspend, let's pause the presidential campaigns, let's meet and come up with a schedule so that then at that level also there is appreciation of all the participating candidates to say which part of the country is this person campaigning and so forth. So the meeting was held. Yes, we must record that all the 14 candidates were represented. A good number were there in person. The majority were present in person. Others sent their agents, their election agents. So we had a very fruitful meeting. A lot of clarifications, a lot of, like you said, the issue was, look, why now? Why this is new? But the rationale was explained. And having understood the rationale, I think the presidential candidates were in agreement that, look, the objective of the commission was to bring order to the campaign process for the presidential candidates. So on that premise, everyone agreed. And then it was also further agreed, say, look, given the period of the campaign, it may not be possible to drill down to a particular district. So let's develop this at province level and allocate at each point, at each period, where the presidential candidates would be. So we're talking 14 candidates over. So that's how we came up with that schedule that divide. At that point, we were 50 days away from the general election. And we have 10 provinces. So we segmented 5 days per province. Yeah, so in some instances, because there are more than 10 candidates, in some provinces there will be more than one candidate. But because the province is big, it's easier then to say, all right, how we will be able to cover this side of these districts while you're covering that as we manage our campaigns in the particular province. So you will agree with me that since then, not only have the candidates themselves appreciated the timetable, but the voters out there are able to see, all right, our candidate is now, or this particular candidate is now in this particular province or particular district and so forth.
So basically, stakeholders agreed,
yes,
to what was put on the table.
Maybe another detail to add is that one of the issues that did come out there was that, look, how do we deal with the head of state, who also is a candidate? So we did, the meeting did agree. So look, for purposes of security, there's no way you could, right from the beginning, schedule a presidential program. So, all right, this month, this week, this period, the head of state will be in this particular. But the meeting agreed that having developed that timetable, it will be brought to the attention of the head of state through their campaign team, also him being a candidate also, so that then they are cognizant as they're scheduling their program. They are aware that this is what is happening in terms of the rest of the presidential candidates. And so far, I think this has worked to the advantage of all the, yes, we've had in a few cases where a presidential candidate was scheduled to be in a particular district and the head of state happens to go to that district. But arrangements have been made in the background where they would get an alternative venue and go there after the, So really, has been acceptance, and the campaign timetable, in terms of its implementation, has benefited not only the candidate but the citizens who have been able to get the messaging of the candidates without the inconvenience of, this rally has been cancelled or this or clashes, but you have by and large, candidates for a period of 5 days having a whole province themselves. And an instruction was further given that where a presidential candidate decides to go to a particular district, the local timetables that I referred to earlier would subsist, so they would give way to the presidential. And this has worked fine. They would go into the district, mobilize, and given that it's at most for a day, the rest of the candidates at the lower levels would give in and give room, and then they proceed. Of course, we have unique instances like big districts like Lusaka, Kitwe, and Dola, where of course the presidential campaign would be in one corner, for example, Hero Stadium. Then other parties will still campaign in other, Lusaka has 10 constituencies now, so the other constituencies would still be open to the other candidates at the lower levels to continue with their campaigns. Yeah.
Okay, so the challenge has been, despite what was talked about and the discussions that you held with the different stakeholders, we continue to hear this presidential candidate in a particular area complain, the police have stopped us because there's a VIP scheduled to come to the area.
Yes, so this is what I was referring to. That so two things. That campaign timetable had two provisions. Okay, firstly, is that as a presidential candidate plans a meeting in a particular district, they would 24 hours prior to that meeting notify the police and our district electoral officer that this particular period we're in this province, and for this particular day we're coming to your district to hold a meeting at such as a place, and notify them. Now, like I indicated, right from the beginning of the development of this timetable, it was made clear that such instances would arise where the head of state would be in a particular area. Now, like we said, there can only be so many days notice for purposes of security, of course, in terms of when the program for the head of state would get to be known. So at that point then, the candidate would be advised, all right, this particular day you are scheduled to be in this particular district. However, the head of state will be campaigning in this area. So could we then relocate to another district, and then within these 5 days you could come back to this district? So by and large, this has largely worked. In the background, we've collaborated with the police. In some instances, we've had to exchange phone calls with the candidates themselves, so that then we can come to an understanding, so that the programs, rather the solution is as amicable as possible. Yeah.
We have, like I mentioned from the outset, the countdown is really on.
Yes, yes,
and
yeah.
we are nearing the 13th of August, 2026. Where are we in as far as the ballots for the election?
Oh yes, made very good progress there. So once again, the viewers will recall that we commenced the printing of ballot papers on 30th June. And we did inform the nation that this particular program of printing would take about a month. And the printing is being undertaken in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, at a company called Al Ghurair Printing and Publishing. So as we speak today, the printing is almost complete, really. And the ballot papers are scheduled to begin to arrive in the country starting Sunday, 26th July. So again, we'll share this information as wide as possible for stakeholders to witness the arrival, and indeed even the subsequent days. So they are not all arriving on the same day, but starting Sunday, and to inform the nation, the next 5 to 6 days we'll have a flight each day. And as we had already indicated to the nation that the ballots are being ferried via charter plane, meaning that's the only cargo on that plane, ballot papers. So given the size and the logistical arrangements, this had to be split over about 5 to 6 flights. You realize that this is quite a significant amount of cargo, because we're talking 226 constituencies, and each constituency is at least a pallet. you know, and some bigger constituencies may have two. So we're talking 200, 300 plus pallets that have to be loaded on these cargo planes and brought to Zambia. So we're on course. The ballots will be, the entire consignment should be in the country before the end of the month, in time for distribution across the country.
And as the ballot papers arrive, how are you engaging with stakeholders? Who's coming to witness the arrival of the ballot papers?
So the process is open to observation. We are going to issue a public notice outlining the detail and time, and then also the accreditation requirements. But beyond the public notice, we will engage all the participating parties and candidates at presidential level so that then they are notified directly to witness the arrival of the ballots. So that process is open to observe. And of course the media. We expect you to be there to report to the nation. Yeah.
Let's move to the election, the 13th of August, 2026. We will have monitors and observers. They are both local and international observers. What exactly do they do, and who qualifies to come as a monitor or an observer? And perhaps you can also help us understand the difference between a monitor and an observer.
All right. So let's start from what do they do? So election observers and monitors are there to, as the word goes, they observe and indeed monitor the conduct of the election in order to enhance transparency and credibility of the process. So they do this on behalf of the citizens out there. And these usually come from civil society organizations in the country. Okay. Now, Zambia also is not an island, as it were, in terms of we belong to regional and indeed continental bodies and indeed international. So the government would, by way of tradition, invite certain multilateral partners like the SADC, the AU, COMESA, the Commonwealth, and indeed the EU to come and observe. Okay, so the purpose then of the monitors observer is to have an independent look at how the electoral process is managed, how the voting process has been conducted, so that then they can render an opinion to say, has the election been conducted in line with what the laws of the Republic of Zambia prescribe? Has the Electoral Commission and all other stakeholders conducted themselves in line with what the laws provide? And usually what they would do then after the observation mission is issue a report and make a statement which is supposed to give their observations in terms of how the Electoral Commission and indeed other stakeholders have conducted themselves in terms of the election and in compliance with the law. And be one key part of that report really is to, if I may mention two key parts, is an overall statement in terms of, because the elections really, there's international standards that Zambia has prescribed, apart from our own laws. We have international standards that we prescribe.
The African Charter.
Yes, and so forth. So they will issue a statement to say, how have these elections fared against this standard? And so key words that would come out is, are they credible? Are they free and fair? They will render an opinion in that respect. Beyond that also, they will issue recommendations for purposes of future elections. What should Zambia do to continue to improve on the electoral process? So those recommendations will be targeted at key different stakeholders in the process. There would be recommendations toward the Electoral Commission. There will be recommendations towards government. there'll be recommendations towards political parties, and indeed the nation at large. So usually the recommendations towards the country would be around the legal framework. What else does Zambia need to do to strengthen its laws for purposes of enhancing the credibility or the running of elections in a particular country? So really that's the role of observers and monitors. Now, there's two broad categories, okay? There's the local citizens and then the international. So international are strictly, the word is observe, okay? So when they go to, on election day, the key really work they do is that on election day, they would visit a polling station to observe the process of voting and ultimately counting and the announcement and declaration of results. Now, an observer can only look. They are not supposed to interfere with the process or indeed even issue a comment. And also these observers are coming under an umbrella of an institution. So that institution would have the head of the observer mission. And it's only the head of the observer mission that can issue a statement. The individual members, all they do is observe and take note as to how the process is going. So for international, really, it's really to observe. For locals, they can choose to either be observe or indeed monitor the election. So there's slight difference there in terms of from the word, is that they could bring to the attention of an election officer if they think there's something that they need to pay attention to, maybe a process that could be made quicker and so on and so forth. But really not to interfere with the process, but just bring to the attention of, But also even them, the local monitors and indeed observers, they apply for accreditation, that is through their respective institutions, and once they're accredited, they're able to go around the centers to observe the elections.
There have been pockets of violence in these campaigns that are taking place across the country, and in some of them you have actually moved in to deal with the situation, sometimes suspend campaigns and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. How do you think this affects the credibility of the electoral process, and what would you like to say to members of the public in as far as avoiding engaging in violence as we are going towards the 13th of August?
Yeah, so the starting point really is to say that I think there is no justification whatever for any form of violence in the electoral process. Because right from the beginning, the electoral process is about competition. So candidates, either sponsored by political parties or indeed independent, have been provided an opportunity to canvass for votes, to sell themselves out there to the citizens, so that come August 13th, they can be voted for. So it is, in as much as you've rightly put, there's been pockets, but the desire of the Commission, and indeed the desire of the country, is that we should have zero reports of violence, because really we are a democracy. And in a multi-party democracy, right from the beginning, we understand that there will be competition. There will be different political parties competing for the vote of the citizen. Yeah, so in terms of what you've referred to, the unfortunate impact of violence is that it leads to discouraging a voter to participate, because then they begin to be afraid that what could happen to them if they go ahead to go to a particular platform and listen to the message of these candidates and so forth. But grateful to the other stakeholders in the electoral process, political parties themselves, and our civil society on the ground, that in most, if not all of these instances, interventions have been made, but chief among them is the police themselves. Where violence has gone ahead to erupt, the police have moved in and dealt with the perpetrators as the law provides. and then restored order to those particular areas. And like you have said, in one of those instances, the Electoral Commission, and in this respect, Kaputa, had to suspend a political party from campaigns, which suspension has been lifted, and now they're able to campaign. So we're glad to appreciate that since then, the campaigns are by and large going very peacefully. But again, we continue to reiterate the message to the citizens out there that, look, there's room for us to exchange ideas. There's room for the candidates to sell their message without necessarily resorting to violence. Ultimately, the people will make a choice. I think Zambia's democracy has proved that no one has won an election because of violence. No. So it does not pay. It's just, unfortunately, leads to very unfortunate consequences of either falling on the hands of the law or indeed losing a life, unfortunately. So we should not get to that. Let's campaign peacefully. Let's accord these candidates to sell the message. Let's accord the voters an opportunity to listen to all the campaign messages and make their choice come August 13th.
Before I ask you to make your final remarks, Mr. Gasaro, how open are your doors to various electoral stakeholders that might want to bring up an issue or two to your attention?
Our doors are very open. Those that have made an effort to phone, to physically come, can attest to that. That there has been a number, if not a very good number of instances where no appointment is made. A stakeholder comes in, would like to seek audience over this issue. An appropriate officer will be identified to be able to sit with them and address that particular issue. If not immediately, escalate it accordingly. So we are open to interact because we realize that this process, we are managing this process as the Electoral Commission of Zambia on behalf of the citizens. And of course, not all the 8.7 million voters may want to come to the commission, but they go to the offices of the commission through their representatives. So these could be leaders of a political party, leaders of civil society organizations, of the church, but some, in certain instances, in citizens in their individual capacity. So we value that and attend to them because only through that then can we ensure that the management of the electoral process is addressing the expectations of the people of Zambia. Yeah.
We've really advanced. Looking back at the electoral roadmap and the milestones achieved so far, we're remaining with very few days to poll day itself. And stakeholders are looking forward to free and fair elections. And everybody's looking to you as Electoral Commission of Zambia. What words of assurance would you give members of the public that this particular election is going to be free and fair?
So once again, to reassure the citizens and in particular the voters out there that the Electoral Commission is committed to delivering a credible election. Okay. Now, they can rest that assurance on how that we have executed on this roadmap as was outlined. At every stage of the process, we have carried the nation with us. We informed the nation we're going to voter registration. We undertook that. We informed the nation we were going to do delimitation. We worked with stakeholders to execute that particular electoral process. We informed the nation we're going to display the register of voters and certify. We've done that. We've shared the information in terms of the registered voters and so forth. We undertook a nomination of candidates. So I'm highlighting a few key activities that the Commission on this roadmap has executed as had committed to the nation. And so based on that, the country can be very confident as we're going to August 13th that the election will be credible. And the ingredients are there, okay? And one of the main ingredients here is that, look, the number of registered voters is in public domain. So as we go to that election, the country is aware of the expected number of voters if we have 100% turnout, that will turn up out there. It's not guesswork. It's a number is known, 8.7 million Zambia. The polling stations where this voting is going to take place is known. So as we go, all I said, the people know the 13,529 centers or voting rooms where this election will take place. The candidates are known. We've just published the validly nominated candidates at presidential, National Assembly, and mayoral. The councillors who were published at local level. We'll make that available even at a national level. So the candidates are known. So we know who we're expecting to be voted for. We know where we're going to do this voting from. We know who qualifies to go and cast their vote. And we know what they are required to carry on that day, their voter's card and their national registration card. So the requirements are there in public domain come August 13th, and we've just been talking about the materials and tools that we are putting together in the final stages, so that including ballot papers that come that day as they walk into those voting rooms, they are facilitated to cast their vote. The procedure for counting is known, how we are going to do the counting. The procedure for the announcements and the declarations is known. So no surprises. This is what has been laid out. And given the record of how we have conducted what has passed, stakeholders out there and the voters can rest assured that come August 13th, the Commission will deliver as it has committed to do.
Mr. Kasaro, I would like to thank you so much for appearing on Election Update and sharing these insights with us here on Zanis TV.
Thank you. The pleasure is ours as the Commission, and it's always honored to be on these platforms, to be able to share with the viewers out there and the nation in terms of the preparations for the election. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, viewers, that's it for today on Election Update. We were hosting Electoral Commission of Zambia Chief Electoral Officer Mr. Brown Kasaro, talking about a number of issues in the electoral process as we are counting down to August 13, 2026. Remain peaceful. My name is Victor Mwila. On behalf of the entire production team, would like to say thank you so much for watching the Election Update. Until next time, it's bye for now.